Hello, everyone. I am Yuan, and I'm here to share with you our paper, Generative AI in the Wild, Prospects, Challenges, and Strategies, on behalf of my collaborators. Recently, we have seen a growing number of GenAI platforms developed. GenAI is designed to generate novel content, insights, and solutions by identifying, replicating, and recomposing intricate patterns within existing data. In the creative industry, artists use AI to generate unique visuals, writers employ AI to craft narratives or generate ideas, and advertisers explore AI for creating advertising campaigns. Creative industry have emerged as one frontrunner in adopting GenAI technologies. For example, instead of writing down ideas for advertising copies, creative writers can now using GenAI to brainstorm and generate multiple ideas, just like the North Face advertising campaign that came up with 10,000 reasons to get back to trail by using ChatGPT. However, despite its immense potential, incorporating GenAI tools into concrete domains such as creative industry often faces major challenges. Users often face a variety of challenges beyond GenAI's functionality. And what are some of the challenges to incorporating GenAI in real-world settings? The present study aims to fill this critical research gap by understanding how users perceive and utilizing GenAI in the wild. While existing literature has studied how users perceive and use conventional AI technologies, the unique aspects of GenAI has received limited attention. For example, unlike conventional AI that focuses on analysis, decision-making, or automation, GenAI specializes in creating new content that does not exist before. Therefore, questions remain such as how people perceive GenAI creativity and how GenAI is supporting their own creative process. Also, while previous research examines GenAI as a static, single instance of tool usage, human-GenAI interaction is a dynamic, evolving process. In our study, we examined the human-GenAI co-creation process using this comprehensive Lua framework. This framework emphasized the use of GenAI as a dynamic, iterative process. We conducted semi-structured interviews with 18 participants who had used GenAI tools in the creative industries. The interview conducted on video conferencing platforms such as Zoom, Teams, Tencent meetings, ranging from 30 to 60 minutes. So here I want to introduce our framework a little bit more in details. This framework examines learning part, which reviews how users acquire GenAI capabilities, encompassing the understanding of concepts, leveraging different rules, and developing different relevant skills. And the reusing part is to show how users integrate GenAI into their creative workflows, including defining objectives, exploring possibilities, and refining outcomes. And the assessing part is revealing how users evaluate GenAI platforms and GenAI products, considering multiple aspects such as quality, regulation, compliance, and content trustworthiness. Please note that while our study is structured into these three categories, these activities are often deeply intertwined since human-GenAI interaction often involved in cyclical and iterative process. So we detail our findings into three aspects. So the first aspect is the prospects, which is the positive perceptions and positive influences of GenAI. This part examined how participants leverage GenAI to expedite and automate content generation. And the second part is the challenges, how they struggle with when facing various uncertainties and complexities. And finally, the strategies, looking at how users actively exercise user agency to overcome many of such challenges. Because we have so many findings here, I just want to highlight several results in this presentation. First, let's look at the learning part. A majority of our participants observed a significant increase in online learning resources pertaining to GenAI tools and skills, ranging from social media platforms, online forums, and also online communities. However, on the other hand, a few participants highlighted the challenge of identifying truly useful information. For example, participants mentioned that there is no one-size-fits-all solution, but the tricky part is to find the right people to learn from. In addition, we also find a very disparate resource availability, especially considering countries such as China. One participant from China mentioned that it is hard for him to find or keep up with the latest GenAI information on social media, since many of the social media are blocked in China. In the using part, a lot of participants are pretty optimistic about how GenAI is improving efficiency and sparking creativity. For example, some participant mentioned that you may find that it's covered in sites that you have not considered before, and find this part is quite surprising. But on the other hand, in the using process, users also highlight the limited controllability, and they mentioned that to get the ideal results is actually relying on a bit of luck. Another concern echoed by our participants, which I want to highlight here, is the engineering-centric design of some GenAI tools. For example, one of our participants shared this cheat sheet or his handwritten cheat sheet with us, highlighting this demanding process. So he mentioned that it involves a lot of manual calculations or even programming in Python to determine the parameters. And it's very hard for a designer without this technical training. We also ask our participants whether they have noticed or used those feedback mechanisms to help GenAI platform to better achieve the outcomes. Interestingly, we did not find a lot of people reported that they have used this feedback mechanism at all. And some participants mentioned that instead of pressing a button to show like or dislike on ChatGPT, a more natural way to improve this outcome from ChatGPT is to follow the same rule of human-to-human conversations, which is providing more clarifications or explain the questions better. When it comes to assessing, some of the participants mentioned that ChatGPT opened a new form of creativity, which they mentioned that creativity does not always need entire original ideas, but it's also including leveraging existing knowledge, reorganizing it, and generate new content. Some participants also embrace this uncertainty and mentioned that using GenAI is like opening this Pandora's box. Another issue with this creative outcomes, and we asked them whether it is necessary for them to disclose the authorship. Some participants mentioned that it does not necessarily for them to do that, because some participants mentioned that if it's a terrible article that's written by GenAI, it doesn't matter because the quality is bad. While some participants also mentioned that it is ethical and also very it's ethical to being transparent about this is generating by GenAI. So we have a quite disparate opinions regarding whether it's necessary for them to disclose the authorship. We also find that users very actively exercising their user agency in overcoming those challenges. For example, users have this agency to actively selecting right tools. For example, users select different GenAI tools for ideation and organization. But when it's come to contexts such as factual accuracy is critical, they are less likely to use GenAI tools, but instead relying on manually create the content. Moreover, users combine GenAI's capabilities with traditional tools such as Photoshop to produce high-quality visuals. And also, users tend to develop their own prompting strategies and what we call is more personalized prompting strategies. Here is a summary of our key findings, and I highly recommend that you go to look at our paper and to figure out more detailed findings, which is much richer than what we outlined here. Some of the design implications is that it is very important to supporting user example features that allow users to precisely specify which factors such as color, atmosphere, and texture to keep while experimenting with others will be highly appreciated. Participants with non-technical backgrounds express a need for more user-friendly interface. So it is also very important to just think from the user perspective instead of engineering-centric perspective. Our study also find that the feedback mechanism in this existing GenAI tools are perceived as non-intuitive and effective. So the design of future GenAI feedback mechanism could be more enhanced. And we detail our suggestions in our paper. Another issue is that we also call our attention that for the digital divide, which refers to the disparity between individuals who have access to digital technologies and those who do not. So GenAI, while it's being an emerging technology, has the potential to enlarge this existing disparity. Another implications for future GenAI policymakers is that how to design a more responsible GenAI. We also have some limitations to improve and provide some insight for future work. Thank you so much for listening, and please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions and feedback. Thank you so much.